بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين ما بعد قال الله تعالى في القرآن المجيد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وعباد الرحمن الذين يمشون على الأرض هونا وإذا خاطبهم الجاهلون قالوا سلاما صدق الله العظيم وقال النبي صلى الله تعالى عليه وسلم من تواضع لله رفعه الله ومن تكبر وضعه الله أو كما قال عليه الصلاة والسلام اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم. Respected friends and elders, honorable brothers, as we come and conclude to this year of 2023, and there are so many things that we all have witnessed, there are things that we all learn, and every successful person who walked on the planet Earth had definitely had goals and had things that he had to work towards. And when you study the history of this world or the history of Islam, we come to know that the most successful man who ever walked on the Mother Earth was Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And when we study his impeccable seerah, we would come to know that Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam definitely took measures in his life. The Nabi of Allah had his perspectives in order, and the Nabi of Allah worked towards the each and every one of us, we love that people, refer to us with lofty names. People refer to us with high statuses, and our ego gets satisfied. The nafs inside our hearts, that becomes very elated. That if I am a particular person, I should get all the praises in the world. However, if a person has worked towards it, for example, a hafiz, a scholar, a doctor, an engineer, rightfully so, we refer to them with the respected titles that they deserve. But in that interim, there's a title that many of us, or the best of us, even neglect, and that title is being the slave of Allah. And that title is being the abd and the slave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala spoke about a prophet in the Quran, in Surah Al-Kahf, Allah depicts that picture that there was a prophet who was by the name of Musa alayhi salatu wasalam. In some instances, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam also wanted some sort of motivation in his life, some sort of inspiration in his life. And Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, in some aspects, is, you can say, as a teacher of the Nabi of Allah, that Allah used Musa alayhi salatu wasalam as an example to motivate the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Correct? So Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, in some places Allah speaks about it, طَهَا مَا أَنزَلْنَا عَلَيْكَ الْقُرْآنَ لِتَشْقَى إِلَّا تَذْكِرَةً لِمَنْ يَخْشَى. So that liman yakhsha is referring to Prophet Musa alayhi salatu wasalam. Now that Musa alayhi salam has been used as a motivation to who? The Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Now that Musa alayhi salatu wasalam was also instructed by Allah to go and learn from someone else. So keep the pattern in mind. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam is being instructed in the Quran that learned from who? Musa alayhi salam. And that Musa alayhi salatu wasalam is being instructed by Allah to learn from another person. So that person should definitely be recognized in the Quran, correct? His name should have been mentioned, or a title should have been mentioned. So in Arabic or in English, we know something as definite or indefinite. And in Arabic, we know it as ma'rifa or nakira. But that person who was a motivation and a teacher, you can say, to Musa alayhi salam, his name is not even mentioned in the Quran, nor does Allah use his name as a definite, as ma'rifah. Allah just keeps it vague. That فَوَجَدَا عَبْدًا مِنْ عِبَادِنَا, he was just a slave of us. He was just amongst the slaves that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has, referring to Khadir or Khidr alayhi salatu wasalam. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala kept his name vague. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala kept his name unknown. Look at the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam himself. The pinnacle of his life and seerah was Mi'raj, the incident of Isra and Mi'raj. And Allah speaks about it in the first page of Surah Bani Israel, that Subhana alladhi asra bi'abdihi laylan min al-masjid al-haram. So now that Musa alayhi salatu was salam, Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, at the pinnacle of his life, he is going and ascending to for Isra and Mi'raj. But look at the title that Allah uses for His Habib sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There were so many titles that Allah could and would have used for Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But what's the title that Allah uses? Subhanalladhi asra bi abdihi. Subhanalladhi asra bi abdihi. When Allah is talking about Khidr alayhi salam, Allah is saying, فَوَجَدَا عَبْدًا مِنْ عِبَادِنَا. That the most beloved title to Allah is Abd. Today we have so many other titles, and rightfully so, but we get so engrossed in that titles and those extra names and those extra titles that we forget that we are the slaves of Allah. The hadith tells us, the Prophet ﷺ, he was given a choice and an ikhtiyar from Allah, that do you want to be a malik, a king and a nabi, or abdan nabiya, or do you want to be a slave and a nabi? And the Nabi of Allah chose being a slave and a Nabi of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, abd loosely translates in Arabic as slave, but it doesn't mean that the Nabi of Allah was a slave, but in reality what it means to be a slave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It gives a gesture of humility. It gives a message of humility, that I am just a banda of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The norm in Indo-Pak subcontinent, if a person says I'm a faqir, you would think he's a beggar, he's a pauper. However, this was the title that Musa alayhi salatu wasalam used for himself in the Quran. Surah Al-Qasas, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, Rabbi inni lima anzalta ilayya min khayrin faqir. This was the title. So here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in this small portion that I read before you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about the slaves of Rahman. Who? The slaves of Rahman. And as this year is coming to an end and a new year is starting, then there are things that we need to keep in mind, that despite the respected titles I have and I deserve, however, I should never forget that I am just a humble servant of Allah. That's the best thing that all of us can have. That's the best achievement. If a person in this life realizes that I am just a humble servant of Allah, our goal is fulfilled. We will become very successful. It's our life, you can say, is a journey from Abdul Nafs to Abdullah. Slave of Nafs to becoming a slave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And not just verbally, very practically, that how can I tread on this path and fulfill the qualities and the attributes of people in reality who are the slaves of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we have to look no elsewhere. We don't have to Google this. We don't have to go sit by, different categories of people. Quran speaks about it itself. In the ending verses of Surah Al-Furqan, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about the people of Jannah, and Allah attributes the qualities of Rahman, the slaves of Rahman. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala starts the verse by saying, وَعِبَادُ الرَّحْمَنِ. And the slaves of Rahman, who are they? The first quality is يَمْشُونَ عَلَى الْأَرْضِ هَوْنًا. When they walk on this earth, they walk with utmost amount of humility. What do? The slaves of Rahman, what's the first thing that we need to have in mind? That I cannot be an arrogant person. I cannot be arrogant anywhere. I remember last week I was at a funeral and there were a couple of kids, youngsters with me, and I was telling them that I was looking at aged people, 60, 70, 80 years of age, and someone can't walk properly, the other person is limping, third one has a different disease, fourth one is diagnosed with, Allah protect. And I'm like, I'm just 27 years old, but I remember 10, 15 years back, growing up in this community, I would see that they were Mr. Somebody. But as time passes, like we have nothing. Half of us can't even walk properly by then. And there's so many other stories that we can hear about. The Prophet ﷺ is saying that by giving honor and respecting someone and adopting humility, if our respect is lost, come take it from me. Again, if by giving humility, by adopting humility and giving respect to someone, if our respect is lost, come take it from me. That if we honor and respect someone and we think that we might, people are going to say this probably person is in need of something. That's not how it works. And the Nabi of Allah in a very beautiful hadith says that man tawada'a lillahi rafa'ahu Allah. A person who adopts humility for the sake of Allah, rafa'ahu Allah, Allah will definitely elevate his status. وَمَنْ تَكَبَّرَ, and if a person is arrogant and he constantly has pride in him, وَمَنْ تَكَبَّرَ وَضَعَهُ اللَّهُ, then Allah will make life for him in a manner that he will have no option but to adopt humility. And there are so many people, again, different examples we probably know of in our families, that they thought they were somebody. But eventually life puts people in such corners that a person has no resort, no turning back but to Allah, and then makes sujood before Allah and realize that He is the King of all kings. In reality, Allah is al-mutakabbir and we are no one. So the first quality that Allah speaks and highlights about the true slaves of Rahman is yamshuna ala al-ardi hawna. That whenever they walk on this earth, how do they walk? They walk with utmost amount of humility. وَإِذَا خَاطَبَهُمُ الْجَاهِلُونَ قَالُوا سَلَامًا. That you have to look at it, how Allah is tying two attributes together that are so important in our times. If a person is walking with arrogance, and at the same time with arrogance he meets a person who is speaking on him, it's a challenge for him to stop his mouth. He would definitely retalk, he's definitely, verbally abuse that person. But Allah is saying, adopt humility, and whenever you come across a person who is jahil, basically who is ignorant, what do the slaves of Rahman do? خاطبهم الجاهلون قالوا السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته, and you move your. It's not necessary for every one of us to argue with ignorant people. Because arguing with an ignorant person, like some scholars say, is like arguing with a donkey. They're not. And different titles that we like for ourselves. However, the best title that the Nabi of Allah opted for, and the best and the most title to Allah, is being a slave of Allah and being an abd of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the people of abd, the people of Allah, who are they and what attributes do they possess? Allah is outlining that. Number one, whenever they walk with humility. Number two, when they meet ignorant people, قالوا سلاما, they say assalamu alaikum, peace be unto you, and then move away. It ruins, if a person is a ruhani person, a spiritual person. For example, you have a beautiful morning, you wake up, you read your fajr salah, you had breakfast with your family, and you're having a beautiful day, and you end up with a douchebag. Then that person literally ruins your entire spirituality. And you just say, I had a bad day today. Why? Because I just met with that person. However, when you end up meeting a bad human being, you have an option. Either practice on what the Quran is saying. If a person is speaking on you, verbally abusing you, قَالُوا السَّلَامَ, say assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, and move away from that equation. Or you have an option of to argue, make things messy for yourself, spoil your ruhaniyat. Let's just say if it's salah time then, and you walk into the masjid and read salah at that time, you're not going to get anything out of that salah. Your mind will be wondering, what did that guy say? How I should have responded? How I could have been the bigger guy in that picture? So the Nabi of Allah is saying, adopt humility and Allah will elevate your status. And the third quality of the slaves of Rahman that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is outlining here is وَالَّذِينَ يَبِيتُونَ لِرَبِّهِمْ سُجَّدًا وَقِيَامًا. That these are such people that when they spend their nights, they spend it in sajda and in standing before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, my respected brothers, and if we look at this, right, currently Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us these lengthy nights, and the mashayikh of tasawwuf, they say these nights are only given to us so we can go to sleep on time and wake up early and stand before Allah. If we cannot do it throughout the week, let's try it once a week. If we can't do it once a week, do it once in 15 days. But standing up in tahajjud and talking to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has a very special ecstasy and enjoyment that we will never be able to understand, comprehend, or appreciate. It has that moment with your Allah. I have a friend, he's becoming a heart surgeon, and I was talking to him, and he was like, every second person you meet today is just talking about money. It was like every person's goal has become money. But we need to realize there is a greater purpose to life besides money as well. Whatever, as Muslims we know this, La ilaha illallah, basic, whatever Allah has destined for you and me, we will get it. There's two people, one person does the same amount of effort as the other person does. One person becomes a millionaire, the other one is still dealing with his mortgages. Because that shows you that most of you probably see human beings that they're not very smart, maybe not even so ethical, they don't probably look so beautiful, but Allah has blessed them. That shows you Allah is in charge and Allah is distributing. But whatever is within my resource, whatever is within my ability, in today's time people are dying right and left, and one of the alamat of qiyamah, signs of the hour that the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam outlined, is that unexpected death. Deaths will become so common that a person will be completely shocked at how is this even happening. I mean, so many funerals I personally have attended. People went to sleep, young kids never woke up again. It's no more than 60, 70, 80 years. And there's so many people that I know in my circle, they had so many goals in their lives, there were so many ambitions that we had to work towards, but eventually time comes and you can't do anything about it. So these few nights that Allah has given us, Ibrahim ibn Adham rahimahullah used to say something very beautiful, that Ahlul Layli fi laylihim aladdu min Ahlil Lahwi fi lahwihim. If a person is sitting in a bar, he's drinking, you tell him, come out. If he's a Muslim, come, let's go to the mosque. He'll say, no, I have this special connection with this place. I enjoy drinking. I like the environment. I like the vibe here. He says, Ahlul Layl, the people that stand up and talk to Allah at night, their nights and the ecstasy that they enjoy, aladdu is more ladid and so tasty than the people of futility and whatever they're busy doing else. And then he says something more amazing, that ladhatul munajat. You know, ladha in Arabic, you have a tasty biryani and you say very ladhi. So he says ladhatul munajat. Munajat is talking to Allah. And in our Desi culture, from childhood, I had witnessed this till a good amount of my life too. That Yalla ye de de, Yalla ye de de, Yalla ye de de, Yalla ye de de, Yalla give me this, give me that, give me this, give me that, like Allah is working for us. Dua doesn't mean that you talk to Allah like a parrot. Dua means communicating with your Allah, expressing yourself in front of your Creator, talking to Allah without looking at the time or the circumstances. Like getting yourself ready, making your body, the wudu is done, you're standing at a chill place, it's you and no one else around you. You lie down that musalla, put your phone, your thoughts, everything on the side, and you stand sincerely before your Creator. And you talk to your Creator. You cry out before Him. And you don't feel good about it, and you don't feel like you have achieved something, come back to me. You feel that with your Creator. So this is what Ibrahim ibn Adham rahimahullah is saying, that ladhatul munajat. You know this munajat, talking to Allah, crying before Allah, this ladhat, innaha laysat min al-dunya. This is not from this dunya. Innaha min al-jannah. So talking to Allah and enjoying talking to Allah, it is something of Jannah. أَظْهَرَهُ اللَّهُ عَلَىٰ أَوْلِيَائِهِ مِنَ الدُّنْيَا. Allah only gives it to His few friends in this dunya who are actually pious, close friends of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that as this year coming to an end and new year starting, if we haven't enjoyed this, let's have this goal in our lives. Ya Allah, make me among those people. That actually I can talk to you. There's three people that the Nabi of Allah spoke about that they taste the halawat of Iman, the sweetness of Iman. I should ask myself, and all of us should ask ourselves, that did that time come in my life where besides no material involved, nothing involved, did I ever enjoy the sweetness of Iman? And once a person tastes that sweetness of Iman, nothing can take it away from him. So we ask the Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us all the tawfiq to make amal. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Please read your sunnahs.